"I'd love to hear all about it, if you'd tell me," Kay said. "It was in the year 1811, Captain Harker began. "I was then in the Plunderer, West Indiaman, which I commanded and partly owned, in the port of Santa Barbara, loading sugar. War was raging all over the world. We in the Plunderer were very short-handed. The admiral on the station had impressed all our best men, and we had lost some by fever. We had a crew of 21 all told, to load, sail and defend the ship, and of all of them, only Hollings, my mate, was a man to trust in trouble. Nearly all the South American states were then breaking loose from Spain. A revolution broke out in Santa Barbara. The rebels marched upon the capital, which had only 100 soldiers in the garrison. The people expected the city to be sacked. The Archbishop, with his priors, came off to the Plunderer to ask me if they might lodge the treasures of the churches on board my ship for safety. I said that I had a very weak crew, that I was in an undefended port, and that French privateers were known to be on the coast. They said that as the rebels were in sight, they had no other chance of saving the things. So at this, I consented. They brought it aboard at once, and I had it stricken down into the after hold. It consisted of church ornaments, images, lamps, candlesticks, reliquaries, chalices and crosses, of gold, silver and precious stones. Most of it was packed in grass matting, but in the hurry some were bare. I had never seen such wealth. Certainly my crew never had. In a way, I saved it. For 2 hours later, the rebels entered the city and sacked every church within the walls. Then my troubles began, but not from the rebels. 7 ships were seen approaching the port. From the whiteness of their sails, I judged them to be French. Hollings, my mate, agreed with me. Roper Bilges, my gunner, a drunken and careless man, thought that they were Brazilians. Twiney Pricker, my sailmaker, a sinister person with a great deal in him, said that they were French privateers. I gave the word to lower the boats and tow the ship out to sea, there being a dead calm inshore. By the time that we were clear of the headland, the squadron was within shot. They were 4 French corvettes, 2 brigs and a schooner, all full of men and well armed. In the first shots exchanged between us, they wounded poor Hollings. They continued in chase till dark, driving us to the westward, but not gaining on us. I was more than anxious, having now only 18 unwounded men on board, to sail the ship and defend this great wealth. After seeking guidance, I determined to make for our naval station at Puerto Recife, to hand over the treasure to the British admiral commanding there, and ask him to return it in a ship of war when the civil troubles had ceased. Having set down this determination in writing, I read it to poor Hollings, to the gunner Roper Bilges, and to the sailmaker, who all approved it. Going on deck, I read it to the ship's company. It was then dark, but the enemy's ship's signals were still visible astern, perhaps 2 miles away. The wind was freshening from the north, which made the land a lee coast to us. Our rigging had been somewhat cut by shot, and with poor Hollings dying, the enemy near, the rocks close, night upon us, 2 wounded men to dress, and the whole navigation of the ship depending upon me, I had my hands full. I have blamed myself bitterly for being taken unawares. I had no thought that what afterwards happened would occur. Poor Hollings died at midnight. With the wind freshening, I could not be present to minister to him. I stayed on deck till about 3 o'clock in the morning, when it was light enough to see the enemy ships far astern. That danger being past for the moment, and the ship holding her course well, I left the deck in charge of the sailmaker, intending to lie down in my clothes for an hour. I was gravely uneasy at my position, but did not doubt that I had decided rightly, both in receiving the treasure on board and in making for our squadron at Puerto Recife. I had not been long asleep when I was awakened by Roper Bilges bursting into my cabin with some of the crew, who seized me and bound me, threatening to kill me with their pistols, etc., and saying that the ship was now theirs. On my trying to reason with them, they put a gag in my mouth, and gave 3 cheers for Roper Bilges and the bishop's treasure. They said that they were now going to be gentlemen, and on the account, that is, pirates. Whether the first thought of this came from Bilges or the sailmaker, I cannot say. Certainly Bilges was now their captain. After 5 days of standing to the west, they put me ashore on the coast 300 miles from any settlement of white men, with no weapon but a knife, and no means of livelihood but that and a fishing line, which my Negro seaman had the humanity to slip into my hand. They left me on the coast, and sailed away upon a northwesterly course, as though for the Gulf. What became of them, no man knows. I was made prisoner by the Indians, who took me with them far into the forest, to their camp by the falls. I was with the Indians as a slave for more than 5 years. Being a slave is bad. It makes a man think too much of his own misery. Still, in the end I escaped, which few slaves do, and returned to a home of love and beauty such as few slaves have ever had. I had been given up for dead by many. Some supposed that I had run away with the treasure. I am glad to say that the Archbishop, who knew me, never thought that. He had caused the ships of our navy to search for us. The Admiral, in his report, said that the plunderer had left Santa Barbara fighting an enemy squadron, and that although she had not been captured, as the men of the squadron confessed when they were afterwards taken, she had probably received grave injuries and had sunk. When I made the truth known, the members of the crew were described and posted as pirates throughout the western seaports. I visited all the possible ports myself, and sought among the receivers of stolen goods for some trace of the treasure. I searched among hospitals, prisons, hulks and galleys for some of the crew. I found no trace whatever, nor could I find any ship, lighthouse keeper or signalman who had seen the plunderer after me, when I saw her heading northwest as though for the Gulf. I do not know what became of her. Sometimes I think that she sank with all on board. Sometimes I think that she reached some port in the Gulf where the crew settled and lived at ease. The treasure was trusted to me, my little great-grandson. I cannot tell you how the loss of it weighed upon me. I could not go back to my profession of merchant trader. My remaining days were passed in hunting for clues of it. For months I would say to myself, "No, the plunderer sank with all on board." Then I would read that pirates had been captured in such and such a place, and after that I would know no rest till I had examined the confessions of the crew, what ships they had taken, and whether any could have been the plunderer. Then, after more months of thinking that she had sunk, I would say to myself, "No, Roper Bilges probably sailed her to Europe, to a port of France or Spain. He may now be a great man in either land." When such thoughts came, away I would go for months to either land, or to Holland or Denmark, or further still to Italy and the Levant, to ask in the ports till my heart sickened. I was known in many ports as the mad Englishman. No one had ever seen the plunderer, except an Italian in Genoa who had been my steward in her for a year. One of my griefs was this, that my wife and son, your grandfather, longed for me to give up the quest. They were sure that the plunderer had sunk, and thought me mad to persist. Another grief was the knowledge that many people here believed that I had run away with the ship and stolen the treasure. It is said that listeners hear no good of themselves. I sometimes heard people say, "Ah, old Harker, they do say that he was a pirate and ran away with all the cathedral money." Or, "Yes, he says that they took the ship from him with all that treasure on board. I dare say he wasn't very unwilling. Why didn't he shoot them? He had his pistols." Or, "A very likely tale that he was among the Indians for 5 years. Much more likely he was spending the treasure somewhere." Once I heard a man say, "It's my belief he's got the treasure hidden in his house. Everybody says so. Besides, if he hasn't, what is it that he's got hidden under the hearthstone in his bedroom?" My bedroom is now yours, Kay, the room over this. "What is underneath that big hearthstone?" Kay asked. "Underneath that big hearthstone?" Great-grandpapa Harker repeated. "Of course, some say the treasure. Then some think that somebody has been murdered and hidden there." "And what is there?" Kay asked. "Would you like to see, my little great-grandson?" Great-grandpapa Harker answered. "There is not much to see. What is it, Rover?" As he spoke, the door of the library was thrust open. A pointer came shambling, wagging and cringing all at once to his master's feet. The library changed and blurred at his coming. He seemed to have let a lot of light into the room. Indeed, even as Kay looked, it was not a room, but the field where the cows were grazing. But the cows were blurring all together into one. They were, in fact, not cows, they were bushes, browner than bushes ought to be, with a blueness above them which he knew was meant to be the sky. He saw Great-Grandpapa Harker standing there, but something dark and oblong surrounded him and shut him away. Why, he's gone back into the picture, Kay thought. The glass of the picture shut the old man still further away. The picture was over the mantelpiece, and there was he, Kay, on the other side of the table, bent over the French verb pouvoir. Baxter's portrait of Great-Grandpapa Harker was staring down, unmoving. The governess entered. "Put away your pouvoir now, Kay," she said. "It's time for writing lesson. Take a piece of paper and write a nice letter to yourself while I do my books." Kay began his letter. "My dear Kay, I hope you are quite well. I hope your friends, the cats, are quite well. I am quite well. Please give my love to Ellen. I hope she is quite well. We have a nice dog here, but he is naughty." He sucked the end of his pen for a long time, but could think of nothing more to say, except that the naughty dog was quite well. "Have you finished yet?" the governess said. "How many more times am I to tell you not to suck your pen like that? You are a disobedient child. Let me see what you have written." "Really, Kay," she said, having read the letter, "I forbid you to mention the words quite well in any other letter that you write. You learn a phrase and then repeat it, just like a parrot. And then how do you spell naughty? N-A-U-G-H-T spells naught. N-A-U-G-H-T-Y spells... What does it spell?" "I don't know quite what it would spell." "Yes, you do, sir. Think. Now, what does it spell?" "Think." "No, it doesn't spell think. It spells what you are, naughty. Now you'll write out N-A-U-G-H-T-Y 25 times. And look at your writing, all slopping and sliding. You will not put both your fingers on the pen. You never see me with my finger under the pen in that way. You'll never be able to write unless you get both your fingers onto the pen. Now put them on the proper way." Usually, after lessons, he played by himself in the garden, in the shrubberies if it were dry, and on the paths if it were wet. Today he went out of the garden to walk by the brook which ran beside it, to watch the minnows in the shallows, and to see his friend, the water rat, coming from his cool swim to nibble a cress. The water was clear, with green weeds swaying in it like fishes' tails. The water rat slid into it with a little fall of earth and swam downstream to his hole. "I do wish I could be a water rat," he thought. He wandered into a lane and then away across the fields to the church, where he found old Bert the sexton going up the tower to wind the clock. "Mr. Bert," he said, "did you ever know my great-grandfather Harker?"
"Why, Master Kay, I've known all of you. I've known your father, Mr. Harker, and your grandfather, old Mr. Harker, afore him. And yes, I knew old Mr. Harker, but he was an old man when I came on to be a boy. That is, he wasn't an old man, but he seemed old. And he was old beside old Mr. Harker."
"Will you tell me about him?"
"Why, I don't know that I can. Let me see now. Old Mr. Harker. He'd been a savage Indian, so they did used to say. Ah, old Mr. Harker. Yes, things were very different in those days. I'd no railways in those days, nothing but the coach up and down. And they'd the old gallows up on the hill. Let me see about old Mr. Harker, then, whether I can tell you anything. He lived where you live, only it wasn't built onto then, the new part. That was your grandfather built that, old Mr. George. I remember old Mr. Harker had a stick he used to walk with, a foreign stick, all carved by the savages. They used to say he had a lot of foreign treasures all buried away, all gold and that. But I never believed that. For my father once heard him say to old Mr. Robert, that used to live in the Dingles' old place, but they made him bishop after, "Robert," he said, "if I could only find that treasure, it would be a load off my mind." So I never believed he had treasure. But about him, Master K, I used to see him stumping about with his stick. He had the rheumatic complaint from being wet through so often. He gave me some of these foreign fruits once, done up in sugar, because I took a letter for him. They did say he oughtn't to have died when he did, for he wasn't what you'd call old, but they did used to say that he had something on his mind, if you understand me. He had his tomb done out very pretty in the south aisle, though it seems old-fashioned now. There it is, by the pew where they Pengers sit, just this side of where they put your grandfather. Kay stood upon the stone which covered great-grandpapa Harker. On the wall above the pews near it was a memorial tablet carved with a small lady in high relief mourning beside a very big urn. A ship showed in the distance. Part of an anchor stuck out of the urn. Underneath the design was an inscription. Beside this stone lie the mortal remains of Aston Tyrrell Harker, son of Charles Tyrrell Harker, Esquire, late of Seeking's House in this parish, born 17th of August 1782, died 13th of January 1850. He was constant in affection, spotless in integrity, a useful magistrate, eminent in his calling, manly in fortitude, womanly in tenderness. He combined the graces of a scholar with the virtues of a good citizen. Reader, canst thou say as much? If not, forbear to judge. This stone was erected 1850 by his sorrowing widow, Jemima Siskin Harker, eldest daughter of Sir Brambling Siskin of Siskin Hall, whom he married in 1811. A stone to Jemima Siskin Harker, erected by her sorrowing son, George Tyrrell Siskin Harker, lay a little to the east of this tablet on the same south wall. Kay spent some few minutes looking at these and other tablets in the aisle. He then tried to make out the subject of a stained glass window, which he had puzzled over at a distance during many a dreary sermon. He could not get it clear. There were bits of heads, glories, horses, and old writing. What he had decided was a yellow half-lopped rabbit seemed to be a hat with spikes. This was a blow, for the rabbit, named Bunkin, had beguiled even the litany. "Mr. Burt," he said, "could you tell me the name of the gamekeeper who looks after Coney Cop Spinney?"
"Why, yes," the sexton said. "That's the squire's covert. His keeper lives by they pine trees out by Rye Meadows. Roper Bilges is his name, and Bilges is his nature, they do say."
"Roper Bilges?" Kay cried. "Roper Bilges? Were his ancestors gunners?"
"No," Bert answered. "Not so far as I know. Unless shotgunners."
"Did they come from these parts, do you know?"
"No, they came from up Salop way somewhere, not so long since. That Roper's brother is footman to Sir Hassel."
"Were there ever many smugglers here when you were a boy, Mr. Burt?" Kay asked.
"You mean what they used to call the Night Hawks? Why, no, those were done before I began. They took to killing people. No, but there was something like them going on, bringing brandy and tea and that, not so very many years ago. I knew some who were concerned in it, though it's best not to speak of it. Only it was a blessing to poor folk in those dear times. Dreadful the prices were. I don't know who the head of it was, except that he was a gentleman, and he worked it very cleverly, no one quite know how. No, they never caught him, but it came to an end."
"Was there anyone called Brown or Trigger doing it, do you know?" Kay asked. Mr. Burt's face changed at the two names. He looked hard at Kay.
"The name I always heard tell was Mr. Galloway," he said, "but it may not have been his real name."
"I suppose all the things were brought up the river?"
"Yes, all these fellows, the Night Hawks as well, brought their things up the river. And a very queer thing, now that we're talking of this, was what happened at the time of the great flood. There were some barges that had come up with corn to the old mill that was. He's gone now, but you can see where the wheels used to be. Condicott Old Mill, they called it. A very big mill it used to be. You'll have been to the place."
"Yes," Kay said. "I went there to a picnic once, and afterwards we all fished, but never caught anything."
"Well, that's where Condicott Old Mill was," Mr. Burt said. "And about these barges that had come up. They'd come to what they called the wharf just below the lock in very rough, rainy weather. You'll remember the wharf, maybe. It's just at the mill. Then there came the great flood, when all those barges were washed away and stove in about Cold Comfort Bridge.
My father was a carpenter and builder, and as the barges were stove, he offered for the wood to break up the wrecks and carry them away. Now, when he came to break up those barges, he found that every one had a false bottom. There was a secret place in each one where quite a lot of things could be put, and in 2 of them he found packs of tobacco, only the flood had got at it. So that shows you, doesn't it, how the stuff came and where it came to. My father never mentioned it to people, but it was queer, come to think of it, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed, Kay said. And do you remember the Great Flood?
Why, yes, Master Kay. No people who saw it will forget it. There was a week of storm in January after a very wet season. Oh, dreadful it had been, with the corn all lying out as late as October, all sprouting in the stooks. Then in this week it rained very hard, and the river rose. And then at full moon the spring tides came up and stopped the head of water from getting out. So it was like a sea all the way from up waters to Seven Hatches and beyond. Bridges broken, all except the old one. Cows, pigs and sheep carried away. No getting across the river anywhere for days and days. And the weirs, oh, they were terrible. They would turn a man's mind to look at them. With all bits of cow byres, haystacks, pig troughs, trees, hen coops, bee skeps, everything just going tumbling down. I saw a cradle go over at Condicote Old Mill, and if there had been even twins in it, no man could have saved them. And nearly all the boats were gone too. It was all like a big sea as far as one could see, with hedges and trees standing out of it, and sometimes a sort of island with a few cows on it mooing to be milked, poor things, or a poor horse running round half-starved.
Did you ever hear of a Mr. Brown who was drowned in the flood? Again Mr. Bert's face changed.
You mentioned that name before, he said, as well as another name. There was a lot of talk about those two, that Sir Trigger, for he was a sir, murdered Mr. Brown and flung him in the water and then fled.
Do you think he did? Kay asked.
No, Master Kay, I don't. It's my belief that they both fell into the flood at Condicote Old Mill and were drowned. Only the Sir Trigger was washed into a mudbank and buried, whereas Mr. Brown was carried to Seven Hatches and found. 3 or 4 people disappeared in the flood and were never heard of again. I believe Sir Trigger was one of them. If not, Master Kay, I would say that it was the other way about, that the Brown man murdered him and was drowned while escaping.
What makes you think that, Mr. Bert?
It's a long while ago, Mr. Bert said, and everybody concerned is dead. But that pimply Watto's father, who was a bad one, when he was dying, told my father that on the last night those two were seen, he saw them both at the Ring of Bells so as to know 'em. And at midnight that night, he saw them both again near the mill, and the Brown man was threatening the Trigger man, saying, "I've warned you twice, you'll get no third time." And the Trigger man said, "If I lay hands on you again, I'll mark you. Get out." And the Brown man did get out. But when the Trigger man moved on, Watto saw the Brown man creep after him and take out a pistol, and no man ever saw them again alive. They both went on towards the flood. Watto never came forward with his story at the inquiry, because he was afraid he might be charged with murdering them himself. Besides, he wasn't there himself for any good, you may be sure. And maybe his story isn't true, for he wasn't always quite the one for the truth. It's best to give them both the benefit. The Great Flood was more than enough to drown them without either of them doing murder. Still, that was the tale he told. They put a tablet to that Brown in Little Zenner Church, if ever you go there, to the memory of Abner Brown, Esquire, a stranger, a victim of the Great Flood. But there, I'm rambling on past dinner time.
He had moved away after dusting the knees of his trousers when he stopped.
That Mr. Brown was a Western gentleman, it was thought, he said. No one knew where he came from. He had £25 in his bag at the inn, and no clue to where his home and people were. A white-haired man he was. I've often thought of his people far away, never knowing, though they'll have done sorrowing by now, poor souls.
That night, Kay had not been long asleep before he woke up to find the room brightly lit as before, although it was dark night outside. In the passages near his room, there were whisperings and footsteps, as though people were pausing at his door to mutter some password. He sat up, expecting them to come in, but they passed on. When they had gone, he quietly opened his door an inch or two and peeped out. Some people in scarlet cloaks were just passing through a door at the end of the corridor, but one of them had paused. She was a young, very handsome witch with long earrings. "Come along, sweet Belladonna," her companion said. "We shall be late for our chapter." "Wait," Belladonna said. "I must just see what is in here." "No, come along. We must not keep Abner Brown waiting." Saying this, the witch pulled Belladonna away, and in a moment the door closed behind them. Whether it was the closing of the door or the sudden movement, Kay could not tell, but at the instant something fell onto the carpet from Belladonna's sleeve or pocket. Kay crept out to see what it was. It was a little red glass bottle with a cut-glass stopper. "I expect it's her scent bottle," he thought. He tried to open the door through which he had gone, so that he could give it back to her, but the door was fast closed, and what was worse, the handle gave him pins and needles when he touched it. And another strange thing was that all this part of the house was unlit, while his own room was brighter than a summer day. The cuckoo clock inside the closed room cuckooed for 11 o'clock. When he was back in his room, he looked at the little glass bottle. "Witch's scent," he thought. "I wonder what it smells like." But it was not scent. It was labelled like a physic bottle. "Invisible mixture. Take 3 drops upon a lump of sugar, night dose. Take 6 drops upon a lump of sugar, day dose. Repeat dose if necessary." "I believe it's the stuff they take to make themselves invisible," he thought. "I'll try it, and then I'll go out to the gamekeeper's cottage to see how they behave when they find that the hunters aren't at Coneycop Spinney at all." He had some old lumps of sugar put away under the carpet. He took out one of these and carefully opened the bottle. The mixture had a warm, rich smell, like the smell of green bracken on a very hot day. "I must be very careful of this," he thought. He dropped 3 drops onto a lump, popped it into his mouth, and re-stoppered the phial. A glow went through him, as though he were sucking the loveliest peppermint ever made. He hid the phial in a mouse-hole in the skirting board behind the valance, and then stood up. He felt a pepperminty feeling go tingling along his toes, and lo, he looked at his toes and could not see them, nor his legs, nor his pyjamas. And though he looked at himself in the glass, he was not there. He was invisible. "I say, what fun!" he said. He put on his slippers and went down into the hall, where a mouse was eating a crumb in the centre of a patch of moonlight. The mouse did not see him, but went on grinding and nibbling at the crumb till it was finished. He pushed the chair against the garden door, clambered up it, drew the bolts, turned the key, undid the chain, took off the burglar alarm bell, and opened a way for himself. In a minute he was over the wall and away to the pinewood out by Rye Meadows. It was thrilling to walk up to rabbits in the grassy places and to stroke them, while they thought that his touch was either a grass blade or the wind. An owl blundered right into him, bounced off, hovered, tried to make out what it was that it had hit, and then sheered off, much puzzled. At Peter's patch, the keeper's dogs came out barking at him, with the keeper after them.
"What are Sol and Joe barking at?" his wife asked. "Sounded like a footstep to me, but there's no one here. I expect it was only a rabbit. I'll rabbit them rabbits. Come in, dogs."
When they had gone into the cottage, Kay crept a little nearer. Some friends of Mr. Bilge's were there. Kay peeped in at the open door. The dogs snarled, and their hair stood on end with terror.
"Quiet, dogs, will you?"
Mr. Bilges said, kicking them in the ribs.
"Now we'll have a little drop of our nice spirit which nobody knows about."
He produced a bottle, some sugar, and a lemon, while his wife brought a kettle of hot water and a bowl. Then they began to brew a punch. Kay could see the keeper's friends. They were Brassy Cop and the Pimply Watto, as they were called, the 2 worst poachers and fighters in the district. The other was the young Bilges, who was footman to Sir Hassel Gassel. They drank the punch when it was made, then they began to boast.
"It must be nearly time to move off to the spinney," Brassy Cop said. "I heard the clock go 1. "They'll not be finished before 2 or 3, we hear," the keeper said. "What I want to do is to come in among them with my good gun just as they're packing up my rabbits. I'll soon settle their hunting." "Ah," his brother said, "what I want is to get their rabbits and get the money for them. I reckon to get 4 times drunk out of what we get tonight."
"What I'm for," Watto said, "is to bang them black and blue with my knoppy blackthorn."
"Ah," Brassy said, "a few good bangs on the heads with that, and they'll not poke so gamesome another time. But I've got my nice brass knuckle dusters. That's what I'll dust 'em with." "Why, mercy me," the keeper's wife said, "if we haven't left the game bags down at the hall. Whatever shall we bring them rabbits home in when we've beaten them?"
"Ah," the keeper said, "why, whatever shall we? We shall want a big thing. There'll be 100 rabbits."
100 rabbits, Brassy said. "They'll kill, and we'll eat, and bang 'em into the bargain." "But what shall we bring the rabbits home in?"
"I don't know, except we each carry 20.
"I know what we can pack the rabbits in," the keeper cried. "My old grandfather's sea trunk, or chest as he called it. That'll hold the rabbits. I'll fetch it down." Kay heard him go upstairs. Soon he came down, trundling the chest after him. It was a big black wooden chest, bound with iron at the corners. It had the name R. Bilges painted in dirty white letters on the side. There were rope beckets or shackles curiously wrought, instead of the usual handles to lift it by. "He might be your grandfather's coffin," Brassy said.
"He was a seaman gunner, my grandfather was," the keeper said, "and a fine old drunken boy he was. It's my belief he had something on his conscience. There's some of his things still in here."
On opening the box to empty it, he pulled out some old bottles covered with wickerwork, an old leather knee boot, a patched pair of shoes from which the buckles had been cut, and some books.
"That's my old grandfather to the life," the keeper said. "Just some empty bottles that you can't drink, and old leather that you can't wear. Into the woods with you."
Kay had just time to slip aside before bottles, boots and books were flung out past him into the wood.
"Now, Brassy," the keeper said, "if you'll take that end, I'll take this, and we'll move off to the spinney. We won't take the dogs."
"Come on, then."
The 3 men moved off towards the spinney.
"Make an end of them all, my bilges," the keeper's wife cried.
"Never you fear,"
the keeper answered, beginning to sing.
"My name is Roper and Willem, and I do intend for to kill 'em. With my good gun and cartridging I'll finish their partridging, for I'll shoot 'em and dead 'em and still 'em."
As they moved into the pine wood, Kay saw the black figure of Black Malkin step from the hedge to join them.
"They'll be at work in the spinney now," he said. "You'll catch them just as they're packing up the spoils and planning what they'll do with them. Oh, what fun it will be to see their faces. But I say, keeper, what is that by the gate that your dogs are barking at?"
The dogs had come out to bark at Kay, whom they could scent but not see.
"I'll dog those dogs," the keeper said, turning back a little. "Get you back into kennel or I'll give you one. Keep the dogs in. Don't let 'em make that outlandish row, as though a basket of wild cats was turned loose."
The keeper's wife called in the dogs and shut the door on them.
"Now, Black Malkin," keeper said, "and what are you gawping at there? Are you going to bark too?"
"No," Black Malkin said. "I suppose it's all right."
"Suppose what is all right?"
"That path there from your house to the wood."
"What could be wrong with it?"
"Look at it," Black Malkin said. "Didn't you see the twigs stir on the path, just as though somebody trod on them?"
"Can't you see that nobody trod on them?"
"Yes," Black Malkin said, "but they moved as though someone trod on them." "It was the wind," Brassy said.
"Or a mouse running across?"
"I know when a mouse runs across," Black Malkin said. "This wasn't a mouse."
"Well then, it was the shadow of a leaf, or a moth, or a bat."
"It looked like a person's footstep."
"Well, there isn't a person, so it can't have been." "Look here," Pimply Watto said. "How much more time are we to waste? Nice fools we'll look if they've gone with the rabbits before ever we get there." "Yes, come on," the keeper said. "You go in front, Black Malkin, and forget all about what you thought you saw."
They all moved off after this, growling at Black Malkin, who kept looking back suspiciously at where Kay stood. He had seen the earth and twigs displaced by Kay's feet. Kay saw him looking back until the party was so far downhill that he could look no more. When they were all out of sight, Kay looked at the things which the keeper had flung away. The bottles and leather seemed useless to him, but he looked at the books with interest. They were, Mother Shipton's Prophecies Explained, Zimmerman on Solitude, The Execrable Life and Death of Scarlet Blackbones, the Barbados Pirate, A Book to Reckon Tides, The Sea Gunner's Reckoner, Tom Maggot's 50 Merry Jests, The Sea Gunner's Practice. All of these books, except the last, were dirty, tattered, dog-eared pamphlets without covers. Kay left them where they lay, but took The Sea Gunner's Practice to look at later. He did not think that this could be wrong, since the keeper had flung it away. He was not sure of the way to Coney Cop Spinney. He went down the hill as the others had gone. The path led over a brook, into the valley below 2 rolls of down. He went on till he came in sight of Coney Cop Hill, which there was no mistaking. A strip of wood in a bottom below the hill seemed likely to be the spinney. It was a still, moonlit night, with nothing stirring except himself. He could not see the keeper's party. He went cautiously. Soon he caught sight of Brassy Cop staring into the spinney from behind a tree. Black Malkin was beside him. Coney Cop church clock, which was just beyond Coney Cop, struck 4. Kay marvelled that the time had gone so quickly, but every instant had been lovely, being out there alone in the moonlight, seeing everything but not being seen. Suddenly, quite silently, 2 figures crept past him, peering at the spinney. They were so intent on what they were doing that they never scented him. Both were very muddy and shaking with excitement. One was Nibbins, the other was Bigham.
"There's the keeper," Nibbins whispered. "He's got no dogs now. Hush!"
Kay saw the 2 bilges, followed by Pimpley, come up to Brassy.
"Not much good waiting any longer," the keeper growled. "Here it's beginning to be light. Not a sign of any hunt nor of any rabbit." "I suppose they got the alarm and didn't come," Pimpley said. "How could they have got the alarm? And here we waited hours in the cold and have to drag that empty trunk back. Where's the 100 rabbits you promised?" Brassy asked. "I'll 100 rabbits you if you ask that again," the keeper said. "Of all the withering watches I've ever watched, this has been the witheringest and the watchiest. Here, you, Black Malkin, if that's your name. Where's your friends that were to come, eh? Where are they?"
"Well, they said they were going to come," Black Malkin said.
"Ah, they said, did they? And on what you said we've suffered." "Are you sure you didn't get the night wrong?" Pimpley asked. "I'll bet they said Friday next week and he mistook it," Brassy said.
"No, I didn't mistake it."
"Well, if you didn't mistake it, where are they then?" young Bilges asked.
"I don't know."
"Nor we don't know." "Wait a minute," Pimpley said. "Here's people coming. Perhaps it's them after all."
Kay saw a woman and a man coming hurriedly towards them.
"It's your wife, Bilges," Brassy said, "with that young artful Artie."
"Is Bilges there?" Mrs. Bilges asked.
"Yes, I'm here. Of course I'm here. What is it?"
"It's about Brady Ride Wood, Bilges. Here's Artful just come from there. While you've been watching here, that Bigham and his friends have cleaned out all the rabbits from the whole South Warren.
"Not a scut left white in the old boiling," Artie said. "They've been and cleaned out South Warren?" "Yes. That's why they never came here then. The whole thing was a blind, to bring us here so that they could hunt in peace. Seems like it. How many rabbits would there be in South Warren? 150 if there was one." "You've been made a fool of, Bilges." "Yes," Bilges said. "I've been made a fool of. We've all been made fools of. And this sneaking, prying Black Malkin that told us all the story is the one that made us the fools. Don't you try to sneak away, you black sneaking sneak, for I've got you by the scruff."
I didn't make you a fool. I told you the truth. Oh, please let me go. You're almost choking me,"
Black Malkin said. "I've a very good mind to quite choke you. You were in the plot with them. You knew they were going to Brady Ride Wood."
"Oh, please, sir. I didn't, sir."
"Yes, you did," Pimpley said. "Don't you dare deny it."
"Of course he knew it,"
Brassy said. "And we gave you milk and a bit of sardine," Mrs. Bilges said.
"Oh, please, ma'am. They disagreed, ma'am. Indeed, they disagreed."
"Yes, and we're going to disagree," Bilges said, swinging him up by the scruff. "He's let us all here for the whole night, and his friends have robbed our rabbits. I vote we fling him into Souse Pig Pond. Yes, with a stone around his neck.
Oh no, please, not into a pond. I shall catch my death. I can't stand water. Indeed I can't.
Who's going to put you into water to poison what's good drink when mixed with gin? No, Souse Pig Pond is mud, and mud is what you're fittest for. Take his tail, Pimpley, and twist it if he tries to escape.
Kay saw them carry Black Malkin away down the hill. He followed them at a little distance to see what they would do. Not very far from the end of the spinney was a big, shallow pan fed by a spring and full of water in the winter, but now full of soft, pale mud, in which Farmer Fattenham's pigs loved to wallow as a protection against the flies. It was a most filthy, messy place. At the brink of this hollow, the party paused.
Now, Black Malkin, the keeper said, this is Souse Pig Pond, and as you're a dirty little pig, you're going to souse in it. Once for sneaking, and once for squeaking, and once for telling us lies, oh!
As he sang these lines, he swung Black Malkin round his head and pitched him swoosh into the mud. They all laughed at him and mocked him as he tried to clamber out.
There. Now we'll go home, the keeper said. Another time perhaps he'll be careful who he tries to make an April fool of.
The party moved off for home in a very bad temper. Kay heard them growl as they passed.
And we've got to drag that sea chest up the hill. And all those rabbits which we could have got 6pence apiece for, let alone the soup and the skins. If I'd shot that Black Malkin with my good gun, I'd only have given him some of what he deserved,
etc., etc. Kay saw Nibbins and Bitem peering from behind the hedge, both of them shaking with laughter. When the keeper's party had passed out of sight, Nibbins and Bitem hopped over the hedge to the brink of the pond. Kay heard them call out,
I say, how on earth? Here, someone's in the mud. Get a stick, quick. Here, give us a paw. Stick out your brush, Bitem. Poor fellow, he's pretty nearly smothered. Catch hold now. Pull now, Bitem, pull. He's coming. I say, he's nearly stuck past saving. Heave together now. There he comes. Why, if it isn't poor old Black Malkin. Why, Black Malkin, whatever brings you here? Whatever brings you here? Black Malkin growled. This is a pretty sort of time to come hunting, just as it's getting light. You're nice people to arrange to go hunting with. I turned up according to the plan. Keeper catches me and souses me in the mud. You two silly asses go gallivanting somewhere and turn up grinning hours too late to do anything. Oh, for pity's sake, stop grinning in that insane way. It's nothing to laugh at that I can see. No, we're really ever so sorry, Bitem said, but we'd better be off to our beds. It's too late to do any hunting now. Perhaps at least you'll explain where you two grinning idiots have been passing the night while I've been waiting for you. We got into a bit of fun out Brady Ride Wood way, Bitem said, and the time slipped away just like magic. We'd no idea it was so late. But we mustn't keep you talking here, old man. You'll be taking cold. Yes, Nibbins said. You hop off home, old man, and have a good rub in the bracken shed. Nothing like bracken for mud. And then have a good stiff bowl of hot milk, with a sardine to it, if you can get one.
With this, they set off to their homes. Kay followed at a little distance, and let himself in just as the blackbirds were stirring. He was visible by this time, but very dim and blurred. As he climbed into bed, the thought occurred to him, suppose I'm invisible at breakfast time. What on earth shall I do then? I'll give Ellen a jolly good scare, that's one good thing. At this, he fell fast asleep, till Ellen called him for the second time by shaking him hard. You'll be late again, Master Kay, and then you'll be punished. He sat up in bed, blinking, not knowing quite where he was. He stayed there blinking long after Ellen had gone. He was not quite sure that he had not dreamed all his adventures. He was no longer invisible, that was very sure. Then, as he sat blinking, a nibbling, scrunching noise came from the dressing table. Something there was grinding and eating one of his lumps of sugar. He sat very still, staring at it. He could see nothing, but the lump was being turned about and becoming smaller. Presently it was all gone, and the scrunching ceased. Then a queer thing happened. there was a little odd flickering sort of a noise upon the dressing table. One of the other lumps of sugar moved in a most odd way to the edge and toppled over to the floor. After lying there for a few seconds, it began to move again, along the edge of the skirting board, behind the dressing table, where he could no longer see it. Soon after this, the scrunching noise sounded from somewhere in the wainscot. "I know what it is," he thought. "The mice have been licking the invisible mixture." He hopped out of bed and pulled the file from the mouse-hole. Alas, they had been more than licking it. They had contrived to pull or to knock out the stopper, or perhaps he had not fixed it in properly, and the precious mixture was gone, either drunken by the mice or evaporated. Even the smell of green bracken and the flavour of peppermint had gone from it. It was just a tiny empty phial of red-cut glass. In his grief and disappointment, he flung it through the open window into the bushes. "I'll never be able to be invisible again," he thought, "just as I'd set my heart on it." As he entered the dining room, he noticed Nibbins curled up on his chair, with his chin twisted up underneath his paw, sound asleep. The governess asked for Black Malkin. "Oh, I can't let him in, ma'am," Ellen said. "He's in such a pickle. He's plastered with mud or something, just as if he'd been down a rabbit hole." Black Malkin was brought in, plastered with the mud of the hog wallow. "He'd better be bathed," Kay said, "because that mud is like tarring and feathering. It closes all the pores of the skin, and he may die." A big pan of hot water was brought, and although Black Malkin objected very strongly, he was soaked, scrubbed, rinsed and dried. "Another time," Ellen said, "you keep out of those rabbit holes, you foolish thing. You get enough food here without crawling down rabbit holes which don't belong to you. Another time the rabbit hole will fall right in on you, and then where will you be?" After lessons that morning, Kay went to his bedroom, to the cool, pink, secret cave made by the valance of his bed. "I don't suppose the book will be there," he thought. "That was probably only a dream, though it was a jolly one." When he turned back the flap of wrappy carpet, the book was there. He turned over on his stomach with a sigh of pleasure to examine it in peace. "The Sea Gunner's Practice," he read to himself, "with a description of Captain Shotgun's murdering piece, with the improved breech action for use upon savage coasts, together with tables and proportions for all pieces usual to that service, by B. Blastum, Master Gunner." On the flyleaf, in a neat handwriting with a clove-hitch flourish below it, was the name of the owner. Aston Harker, Seeking's House, 1804. "Why," he said to himself, "it is my great-grandfather's book. How very strange." The book had been the property of other men before it had come to Captain Harker, for other names and earlier dates were written in it. He settled to read. The Sea Gunner's Practice was stiff reading for a little boy, though there were thrilling pages in it. One page was labelled, "To make the fine mealed gunpowder for priming." Another had the heading, "To make the coarse corned gunpowder." Another began, "To make coloured flares and other artificial fireworks." "Some day," he thought, "I'll make gunpowder by the help of this. Then I'll fire off great-grandpapa's pistols that are on the wall, and I'll have fireworks every night." At the end of the book, some 20 blank pages had been left by the publishers, so that sea gunners might make notes and accounts of their stores according to the tables printed for their guidance. Captain Harker had made notes upon the first of these pages. The rest had been scrawled upon in a clumsy, coarse, untidy writing by someone who did not know how to spell. In the cover of the book, at the end, was a pocket which had once contained an engraving of Captain Shotgun's murdering piece. The engraving was gone. In its stead was a very old, brittle, yellow piece of newspaper headed, "New York, December 1811. Strange Rescue in Gulf." He read on. "Great interest was roused in West Street last evening by the arrival of the ship Seaman's Rights, Captain Isaac Winterbourne, with a cargo of logwood from Campeche. Captain Winterbourne reports that while in the Gulf he saw smoke rising apparently from the sea. Thinking that some ship might be on fire or assailed by pirates, he stood towards the smoke, and was soon rewarded by raising the Crane's reefs, or rocky islets mentioned by Narvaez in his Gulf Pilot. The smoke proceeded from a fire of driftwood kindled by a solitary castaway, whom they found to be too crazed by his misfortunes to give a clear account of himself. No doubt he was the survivor of some merchantman wrecked in one of the great hurricanes, of which the last season was so fruitful. He seemed accustomed to a seafaring life, but neither his clothing nor his speech gave any clue as to who or what he was, the hardships to which he had been subject having destroyed his reason. On arrival in West Street, Captain Winterbourne sent him to a well-known doctor in Bleecker Street, from whose house he escaped in the course of last evening. Though he is certainly harmless, his manner may perplex or even frighten people, and the following description of him is issued to the public. A strong-built man of 5 foot 7 or 8 inches in height, brown hair and eyes, short sandy beard, nose broken as though by a blow, and the lips somewhat slobber. When found on the rocks, he was dressed only in a suit of threadbare cottons. He left the seaman's rights in a costume supplied by Captain Winterbourne, tarred trousers, a tarred hat, blue shirt and jacket. He had no property but an old Bible, a prayer book, and a pamphlet on gunnery, to all of which the demented creature appeared equally attached. All these volumes had had several possessors and gave no clue to his identity. Captain Winterbourne, in his passage home, was twice assailed by the tyrants of the waves, but by his vessel's speed was on both occasions able to uphold the challenge of her name. Kay wondered if the story could refer to some survivor of the plunderer. Captain Harker had said that the plunderer was last seen sailing towards the Gulf. Here was Captain Harker's book taken from a rock in the Gulf at about the time of the plunderer's disappearance. And then the strange thing was that the book had been in the possession of this gamekeeper, whose name was Roper Bilges. Yes, Kay thought, the gamekeeper is the descendant of my great-grandfather's Roper Bilges, and probably the man taken off the reef was Roper Bilges himself. I'm jolly glad that he did have some hardships. But wait a minute. There's all this writing at the end. Perhaps that will tell me more. Turning to the writing at the end, he read as follows. The true statement of Roper Bilges, gunner in the ship Plunderer, Captain Harker, master. Since I have been spared to see that honesty is the best policy, I, Roper Bilges, set down the truth, so that justice may be done on villains. After I took charge of the Plunderer, to prevent her falling into bad hands, I had words with Twiney Pricker, the sailmaker as he called himself, though he was nothing better than a pirate, having been one often, as I will swear. On my giving him orders as captain, he gave me low words, which I passed by, thinking that they would wait till we was ashore. In the night he came to my cot with 3 others, with Jake and the coffin-maker, having been such in Bristol, and English Joe, that deserted the Blanche frigate, and had her on his stomach in blue. They said, We'll no more bilges for captain. Get down into the boat. They put me ashore on some rocks, where there was nothing but birds and a kind of rat what lived on shellfish and the rain. They gave me nothing but Bible and prayer and one about gunnery. Pricker was against giving me fire, but the men stood out for me to have that. When they pulled back to the ship, she filled and stood off, and I never heard of her again. She was going, as they said, to the French settlements. On being left alone, I collected driftwood for 12 fires, which I always kept well heaped up, so as not to lose my fire. I ate on rats, shellfish and seabirds, and the fish in the pools. At first I thought the crew was doing it for a pretend, and would come back and take me off, but my fine scoundrel Pricker saw to that. I reflected what my lot would be when the rain ceased on those hot rocks with no shade, and whether I would go mad, etc. My main fear was of an hurricane, which might whelm me out of this wicked world, which is but a snare. My one hope was I had good books by me. On the 11th day, or it may be the 12th, for my mind was not very correct, being crazed with horror at T. Pricker's monstrous ingratitude, I was took off by the ship's seaman's rights, Captain Winterbourne, master, with whom I returned to New York, though not recovered in my brains. So fearing to be had into the madhouse, to be cut open by the doctors,
I thought it best to avoid into the country parts, where little by little my reason, which parts me from the brutes, came back as good as ever it was, though no thanks to T. Pricker, the madhouse being my dread as well he knew. Coming back to England, I see in the newspapers that Captain Harker is not dead, of which I am heartily glad, for I never meant him harm, and I am glad not to have his blood on my soul, it lying all on Twining Pricker, who I doubt not has reaped his judgment according. It was he had the treasure. Whether it profited him, I leave all to judge, for from that day to this, no one has ever heard what came to him and them. One thing is sure, the ship is sank, for else we'd have heard of their folly, spending their ill-gotten gains, etc. If she was not sunk in a squall, she was cast away, and her crew and fine sailmaker captain made examples of as pirates, as I heartily hope. But having suffered according to his deserts, I forgive him the dirty turn he done me. But if this should come after my death into the hands of the police, let them know that Twining Pricker was from the northern parts, a sailmaker by profession, and speaks in the northern way, lobster-eyed and blue of both eyes, wears his beard in the Newgate fringe fashion, has 2 teeth missing from the upper jaw on left side, being hit with a pot in a dispute about the victuals. He has also a lady's heart transfixed with arrow on chest in gunpowder, also the fat ox of Bedford on his right arm. He speaks somewhat thick, owing to the teeth being gone. Stands a short fellow, but very thick. His hair, which we call twiny, is of a fair colour, like sea twine. Anyone laying such by the heels would be entitled to the reward against pirates, though for my part, not being wishful to testify against an old shipmate, as well as being of a Christian turn and having forgiven him, would like to be kept out of it, not to come into court if I could have the half reward for him. My one wish in this being for justice on bloody-minded villains. If he be now dead, as I sadly fear, government should hang his bones up as a warning what comes to these fine sailmakers that puts their betters upon rocks and would not give them even fire until forced to by some as would have shot them if they'd refused. It being only bullets as such dogs have brains to understand, being very ignorant fellows, for all they sit so high, as these northern parts men do. But I have now done with these wicked men, and took back my own name of R.B., and no harm can come now, Captain H being now dead. So I live at peace, only write this so as truth may prevail, and justice be done. The half reward might be left for Roper Bilges at the post office Shrewsbury, and would consent to a third. R.B.
Kay read this story through 3 times. It served him jolly well right, he thought, to be served as he served my great-grandfather. I'm jolly glad that he was put ashore. It's hard luck that all the treasure was lost, but anyhow, I'd rather that than for Twining Pricker and the others to have the benefit of it. It is exciting fun piecing out the story. He went to the library, where with some trouble he pulled out the atlas which had belonged to his grandfather. It was a big, heavy book. He lugged it to the table, turned up the western maps, and tried to find the Crane's Reefs. After some time he found them, as little black specks in the midst of the pale blue gulf, not very far from the lagoons of the French settlements. That is where they left Roper Bilges, Kay thought, and somewhere between those specks and the coast is where the plunderer sank. I expect she is all covered with coral now, or fallen all to bits. He left the atlas open on the library table and returned to his lair above. When he had read the tale again, he left the sea gunner's practice on his dressing table. That's what happened to the treasure, he thought. Pricker took it from Bilges, and then it was sunk. I wish that I could tell great-grandpapa Harker, for that would be a load off his mind. No one could call that his fault. That afternoon, the governess took him into the village, where he had to wait in the milliner's shop while she matched a reel of silk, to wait outside the butcher's and not to play in the water of the gutter there because there was blood in it, while she complained of last Sunday's joint, which had been tough even when minced. Then to wait outside the stationer's, and not to go staring at the sweets next door because she would only be a minute, whereas she took 11, because she met Mrs. Gossip there changing her novel. Then, in the last torment, to wait in the sitting-room of Mrs. Tattle, looking at her case of wax fruits, while they talked about Mr. Holyport's sermon, and the sermon before that, and whether bugles were going to be much worn that year. The mention of bugles roused him for an instant, but it was soon plain that it wasn't his kind of bugle, and that neither the governess nor Mrs. Tattle would come rousing the forest like Robin Hood. Far from it. Then there was talk of the butcher, whose meat was so tough, and of the new butcher down in the River Road, who had supplied a piece of veal that really, Mrs. Tattle was usually afraid of veal, because Dr. Gubbins says that you must be careful about veal, especially at night, but that this piece of veal, really, it wasn't like veal at all, but just like young lamb, so crisp when hot and delicious cold. Then there was all this talk about this and that in the newspapers, that it was all really dreadful what people were coming to, especially young people. Here there came a home thrust at Kay, who wasn't at all what we were when we were girls, which was very likely true. However, this visit, like so many others, came to an end at last. He walked home to tea at home, with a lecture about not fidgeting when he was paying a call, and especially of not twisting his hat elastic round and round and then letting it untwist, just as he'd been told not to at the swing, because it made everybody sick. He was undressing for bed that night, when the governess, who was preparing to play the piano, called to him from the study.
"Kay, was it you who had out the big atlas and left it open here?"
"Yes, it was, please."
"What did you have it out for?"
"Please, I wanted to look out a place."
"Yes, but why didn't you ask me or Ellen to put it back when you had done with it? You must get into the way of being tidy, and not leave great books about when other people want to use the table."
It was just this interruption which kept him from putting the Sea Gunner's practice into the secret nook. It was lying there on the dressing table just as he had left it. He had almost picked it up to put it away when she asked that question. Then it went out of his mind. He got into bed, making up his mind to keep awake. He was quite sure that he would not go to sleep. He half thought that he would get out of bed to hide away the book, but he didn't see the use of it. One of the mice was scrunching away at the wainscot. He wondered if it was still invisible. It went scrunch and scrunch, as though grinding at the wood sideways. The scrunching mingled with the singing of the governess at last, in a very drowsy noise, which made the room dimmer, dimmer, and dimmer, until